Talk of a drawdown in Minneapolis and a search for solutions. That from White House border czar Tom Homan. The mayor of Minneapolis tells us, I will believe it when I see it. Senate Democrats and President Trump inch toward a deal to avert a partial government shutdown. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin joins us with the ICE-related state of play. Georgia cannot shake the torment of election denialism. Now the FBI is involved. Lots of ballots seized. Why? Who is in charge of them now? Where is all of this heading? Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. No president choreographs his cabinet meetings more carefully than President Trump. They have two hallmarks: muscular presidential messaging and effusive, that's one word for it, cabinet praise. Today, the president took no questions. Unusual. He did not call upon Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Also unusual. Those the president did call upon reinforced core economic messages. Tax cuts are coming, economic growth and inflation are turning the corner, boom times ahead. Choreography. Nothing said about the issue that has created the greatest image crisis in this second Trump term: clashes over immigration enforcement. No explanations, no questions. This uncomfortable topic disappeared by design. The president left commentary to his border czar Tom Homan, who made his first public remarks since being ordered to take over in Minneapolis, a move that sidelined Noem and other top DHS officials. Here's Homan on what has happened in conversations with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
In my meetings with folks so far, and most important, the governor and the AG, the Mayor Frey, we didn't agree on everything. I didn't expect to agree on anything. I've heard many people want to know why we're talking to people who they don't consider friends in administration. Bottom line is, you can't fix problems if you don't have discussions. I didn't come to Minnesota for photo ops or headlines. You haven't seen me. I came here to seek solutions.
When it comes to agreeing on everything, there's one item that might well unite advocates and opponents of Trump immigration enforcement: that photo ops and headlines are Secretary Noem's preferred communication motif. Reuters reports that federal officers have new instructions since Homan's arrival. One instruction: do not engage with, quote, agitators. That means protesters. Another instruction: only arrest undocumented immigrants with criminal records. And when doing so, use a megaphone to communicate, quote, every step of the arrest process, unquote. This new guidance, according to Reuters, says this about protesters, and I quote, do not communicate or engage with agitators. It serves no purpose other than inflaming the situation, unquote. These directives could, emphasize could, foreshadow a drawdown of federal officers conducting immigration sweeps.
The withdrawal of law enforcement resources here is dependent upon cooperation. Like I said, one agent arresting one bad guy in jail means less agents on the street. We have some agreements. We got more to talk about how we're going to implement those agreements. But as we see that cooperation happen, then the redeployment will happen. Look, target enforcement operations should happen across the nation. That's what we've done for decades.
Homan also said this about the investigation into the killing Saturday of Alex Pretty.
We'll let the investigation roll out, let the investigation play out, and let it go where it goes. I'm not going to come out and make any comments that I think is right, wrong. Do I have an opinion? Yeah, my personal opinion, but I'm not going to share that with you. I'm going to tell you, let the investigation play out and see where it goes. But again, the president, one of the words he said to me when I came up here, he said he didn't want to see anybody die.
About Alex Pretty, you may have seen this video. It is of Pretty in a very agitated way engaging immigration officers 11 days before he was killed. At one point, Pretty kicks out a taillight on an unmarked vehicle. Federal officers exit that vehicle and take Preddy to the ground. Now, about this video, there is a swirling social media debate. Was it generated by artificial intelligence? It was not. For what it might be worth to you, we have verified it. What is more, an attorney for the Preddy family confirms the video is authentic, adding, and I quote, "Nothing that happened a full week before could possibly have justified Alex's killing." In Minneapolis for us tonight, as he has been all week, let me turn to Ian Lee. Ian, is there anything that resembles different tactics or a drawdown?
Major, there's a tone shift here, and that comes from the dialogue between Tom Homan and local and state officials. He said they didn't agree on everything, but the one thing they could agree on, that public safety was paramount. And one thing he pointed out in particular that could help that situation is those arrests. If a person is arrested, an undocumented migrant, and they are arrested by local authorities, instead of releasing them into the public, release them to ICE. He says then that reduces this friction that we've seen. One ICE official can arrest that one person. Now, if that person is released into the community, then he says you need more than a dozen ICE officers to go and arrest them. You need a team that does the arresting, and they have to be ready for any potential scenario. But then you have a security team, and that security team is because of the protesters. And again, that's where we've seen the friction for weeks. And so he says one way to reduce that is to have those arrests in jail. Now, he also pointed out his main goal is to arrest people who are public security as well as national security threats, although he did tell Lana Zak that nobody is off the table. If someone is here undocumented, then they are potentially going to be arrested. But the most important thing is you are seeing that dialogue, and with fewer agents going out in the streets arresting people, then you can see that drawdown. You can see things kind of subside a bit.
Ian, catch up my audience, if you'd be so kind, about this Alex Preddy video of days before the Saturday episode that led to his death.
Yeah, so this video took place 11 days before the killing, Major. And in this video, as you pointed out, you can see him confronting federal agents. You can see at one point he spits at them. He also kicks that taillight out, and then the federal agents come out. They tackle him. There's a scuffle. He gets out. You can see, though, in that video, he is carrying a gun with him, potentially the same gun that they took from him in the confrontation that led to his killing. But it does kind of paint a picture of the moments leading up to what happened when he was killed, those days, his movements, but also, again, it just reiterates this friction that we've been seeing, not only with Alex Preddy, but Renee Good as well, where protesters are out there confronting. And as you pointed out in the Reuters article, agents are now told not to confront, not to engage these people.
Ian Lee from Minneapolis, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Minnesota's Democratic State Senator Omar Fatah joins me now. It's good to have you with us, State Senator. You've seen the Reuters reporting about new instructions. I've seen other members of the Minnesota legislature saying nothing has changed. There are still sweeps going on in neighborhoods, chemical irritants being used. What are you personally seeing, and what is it that you want to see change that would constitute something meaningful to you in terms of Operation Metro Surge?
Absolutely. And what we have been seeing and experiencing is that there has not been a wind down as of yet. Just this past Tuesday, we saw in Columbia Heights a student on his way to school being captured and detained. And he was only released because he just happened to have a passport on him. A day later, a man also in St. Paul who was volunteering at a food shelf at a community center was detained as well. And he was quoted to say, I am a resident, I'm a citizen, and so on. A day after that, a couple of days ago, we saw that in Apple Valley High School, ICE was asked to leave after being approached. And then also that same day, someone was targeted at a Target parking lot in Target. And so what we want to see is not just a wind down, but me and my colleagues, folks that live here, want to see ICE completely out of our communities. What we've seen is that people have been targeted regardless of documentation status, and now we have two United States citizens that have been murdered at the hands of ICE.
You may know Representative, and I apologize if I get this first name right, Aisha Gomez, member of the state representative in Minnesota. She posted on X today, neighbors were hit by chemical munitions and one was arrested in my district literally 90 minutes ago. That is sometime earlier this afternoon. What does that suggest to you, and do you know anything about that?
Yeah, Representative Gomez is also the representative of my Senate district as well. We're partners in this. And what we've been continuing to see is that when folks have been peacefully observing ICE, just as they form neighborhood response groups, recording, exercising their First Amendment rights, that they've been met with hostility and at times violence. And since the beginning of this operations, which is the largest ICE operations in our nation's history, what we've been seeing is this hostile, violent interactions by these untrained and untamed officers. And so, whether it's a wind down or a lessening of agents, what we're saying is that that's not good enough because unless they're completely gone, we're going to continue to see this kind of hostility.
Mayor Jacob Frey here in Washington, D.C., addressing the Conference of Mayors, suggested that people in Minneapolis, and I wonder if this is something you have done yourself, are carrying passports to protect themselves should they be stopped. Is that something that has occurred to your constituents? Do you do it yourself, State Senator Fatah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've been hearing that consistently. Myself being the chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, I've heard from many students, students that, in fact, have been born here, second generation students, telling me that although they're United States citizens, all they know is America, they were born here, that they feel that they cannot walk around in their own communities without carrying the passport on them. They're terrified for themselves and for their families, especially in families that are mixed status families. And that should not be happening in 2026.
Do you do that?
I myself, I've been carrying my passport. I've seen colleagues carry their passport on them, and organizers, neighborhood response groups, all of the above. Correct.
What to you, State Senator Fatah, would constitute meaningful change in Minneapolis in terms of judging what is happening on the ground with immigration enforcement and as it relates to state access to the investigation into the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy?
Well, shortly after the murder of Alex Preddy, I was on the ground myself. And what we experienced and what we saw is that the federal agents were not allowing the state or BCA to collect the evidence, to provide a thorough investigation as to what was going on. What we want to see is that our state and county partners investigate what happened. But at the same time, we've seen lies coming out of the administration as to who Alex Preddy was, what he's been doing, what he did, and drawing conclusions that were just verifiably false. And you don't have to listen to myself or other elected officials. You can go online, watch the videos for yourself. Alex Preddy was not a violent person. And himself and Renee Good unfortunately lost their lives being community protectors, just like so many other neighbors have been doing at this time. And so, what looks like justice to me, myself, our community members, is that there's a thorough investigation that leads to charges and arrests, no matter what your title is, whether you're a federal agent or so on. If you commit a murder, you should be held accountable for your actions, period.
You mentioned Alex Preddy. I wanted to give you a moment, State Senator, to tell me what you think of the video that we just talked about with my colleague Ian Lee, showing 11 days before his death, Alex Preddy engaging with immigration officers, kicking out a taillight, and being set upon by those officers.
Well, we've seen neighbors taken to the streets very upset, and rightfully so. Not only have their neighbors been targeted unjustly, we've seen multiple constitutional violations from folks being physically attacked by ICE. We've seen immigrant-owned restaurants having ICE go into the restaurants, lock the door, saying that we're not going to leave unless everyone here provides their documentation. We've heard about patients in holding within hospitals having their identities and their names changed so that their loved ones could not find them. At times, folks that were, for example, in a coma and couldn't make a medical decision by themselves that requires
What about
families
Alex
to do so.
Preddy's conduct, though?
Well, his actions 10 or 11 days prior to his death did not justify him being murdered at the hands of ICE. We've seen folks just like him take to the streets, observe ICE, and we're going to continue to see this type of tension and elevated emotions unless ICE leaves our communities.
State Senator Omar Fatah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We turn now to Ed O'Keefe. You can see him, north lawn of the White House. Still very snowy here in Washington, D.C. Ed, the president had a cabinet meeting today. I summarized what he did and did not talk about. Your takeaways.
Well, he acknowledged that a 3-hour cabinet meeting is a cabinet meeting that's run too long. So today went about 80 minutes, which makes more sense for him, I guess. And it was he who was calling on certain department heads to give him some updates on various economic matters, the release of the remains of the final Israeli hostage in Gaza, issues like that. Never pointed in the direction off to his right at the Homeland Security Secretary, Christine Homan, said, hey, what's up with you? Which was the ultimate sort of signal here in Washington that you're having a bad week, and while you may be in the room, you're not going to get acknowledged. The other rough sign of a bad week is the fact that the Senate right now is working through details to try to, if not avert a government shutdown, at least cause only a temporary and partial one when it comes to funding for Homeland Security. Democrats may extract some notable policy concessions out of Republicans in the coming days that would require a change in behavior for immigration-related personnel across the country. The possibility that they would have to take their masks off and put on body cameras at some point in the near future, that they would follow the same codes of conduct as local and state law enforcement. But none of that came up in today's briefing other than the president suggesting or hoping that there isn't going to be a shutdown. Take a listen.
Hopefully we won't have a shutdown. And we're working on that right now. I think we're getting close. The Democrats, I don't believe, want to see it either. So we'll work in a very bipartisan way, I believe, not to have a shutdown.
One other headline out of the meeting today was that he said he has decided who is going to be his pick to serve as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he'll announce it next week, Major.
Very quickly, Ed, the president also said something about a phone call with Vladimir Putin and missile strikes in Ukraine. What do we know?
He basically said he told the Russian president he should hold off on striking Kyiv for the next week because of the bitter cold in Ukraine, and suggested that Putin has agreed to do that. We'll see if that holds, but it is a sign that he remains actively engaged on that crisis, in addition to all the other foreign policy challenges he's had in recent weeks.
Interestingly, when the spokesman for Vladimir Putin was asked about that directly, he had no comment. Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Thank you very much. Still to come on the Takeout, Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin. He joins me live to discuss immigration changes in Minneapolis and the status of shutdown negotiations. Also, officials in Fulton County, Georgia, respond to an FBI raid at their election office. Still sifting through the 2020 election, to what end? No one seems to know. Plus, the price of gold reaches an all-time high this week. What does this tell us about the U.S. economy and perceptions of global risk? The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat, is one of many in that part of the party calling for reforms to ICE procedures in connection to funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Senator joins me now. Senator, good to see you. What's the state of play, as succinctly as you could describe it, with spending bills and a possible government shutdown?
Well, as I was standing here, they've released it publicly, what we know, and it's as follows. After the vote today, where all of the Democrats and some Republicans stood together against voting yes on all 6 bills, there's going to be a division of the package, and 5 of the bills will be considered. But separately, the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for ICE, will be considered at a separate occasion. In the meantime, negotiations will start to change the way ICE is operating and Department of Homeland Security is operating in Minnesota and across the country.
I'll translate that quickly. That means 5 bills that will fund their part of the appropriations process for the rest of the fiscal year, and then a short-term spending bill for DHS. Do we know the longevity of that? Is that 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 4 weeks? Any guidance on that?
I don't know as I stand here. Of course, many of us have said we're not going to vote to fund DHS until there's real reform with ICE. But the fact of the matter is we need time to negotiate what that reform will be. That is about the only leeway that many Democrats are prepared to offer. Some will not even go to that point.
Define, for your purposes, Senator Durbin, what real reform looks like.
Real reform basically is the end of the killing of innocent people in Minneapolis and across the nation. Secondly, to make sure that those ICE agents start being treated like other members of law enforcement professionals when it comes to their activity, their dress, their uniform, and the like.
What about body cameras and no masks? Is that a bright line for you?
I can tell you, I would put that on the list. It's very obvious. If we ask policemen in Chicago or Springfield, Illinois, to wear body cameras, we should ask no less of these ICE agents.
You mentioned Chicago, biggest city in your state, important part of America. ICE and Border Patrol were there first before Minneapolis. Based on what you saw in Chicago, did you fear something like what happened in Minneapolis would occur?
Absolutely, and something did occur. You know, people were shot, and we saw that we were supposed to be going after the worst of the worst, the terrorists and the murderers and the rapists and so forth and so on, who snuck across our border. When it was all said and done, they were American citizens who were being detained without any responsibility being taken by the Department of Homeland Security.
You mentioned some in your caucus are much harder line on this than you are. Do you believe ICE should exist as a law enforcement entity within the federal government?
Well, certainly not this version of ICE. I would not be voting for it in any way, shape, or form. But the actual responsibility, the legislative responsibility to manage those who are in our country illegally is an important responsibility if it's done right, according to the law and according to the Constitution.
You're a significant voice on the Judiciary Committee, Senator. I want to shift your attention to Fulton County, Georgia. FBI raid there last night. Boxes and boxes of materials taken. No one knows what has happened to them or what the custodial charge of that information or evidence will be. What's your reaction to what happened in Fulton County yesterday?
This president is still pressing the case that he didn't lose the election to Joe Biden, and he lost. He did not get a majority of the votes. He continues to be haunted by that, and he'll go so far as to confiscate election materials and ballots in the state of Georgia, where he was recorded as asking for the agents there to find 11,000 votes for him. He won't give it up. He's chewing on this like a dog that won't let go of a bone.
Does it matter to you, Senator, that there was a warrant that the FBI was legally able to execute in this matter?
When I consider this Department of Justice, it's no surprise.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that they could go to extremes and be supported by the Attorney General and the power of that office.
As I understand it, Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, will appear before the Judiciary Committee sometime in early March. What is your attitude about her hold on this particular job, and what do you hope that hearing, should it occur, will illuminate?
I tried all last calendar year to get Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS, to do what every other secretary has done and appear before the Judiciary Committee to be questioned by both members of both political parties. She refused. Too busy she was in 2025. Now in 2026, she says in 5 weeks, she just might be available for us. Her arrogance does not help her when it comes to being considered by this committee or her appropriation to be considered seriously.
There are a great number of House Democrats who have called for her impeachment and would like to bring those proceedings to fruition. Do you support that idea, concept?
Well, let's get down to basics. If there is an impeachment of any government official, the jury that is going to try the case in the Senate includes myself. As a possible future juror, I'm not going to speculate. But if you ask me, has she done a miserable job managing this agency, the answer is yes. America has seen it graphically in the videos that have been taken in Minneapolis and other cities.
And for you, Senator, and your colleagues, in the context of future funding for DHS, because as you know, in the bill that passed last year, July 4th, there's a ton of money already there. That money's not coming back, and they're going to have it. What do you need to see play out on the streets of Minneapolis to improve the atmosphere for these conversations about future DHS funding and ICE procedures?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the money. In the big, beautiful budget bill of Donald Trump, they ended up giving more money to the Department of Homeland Security than the Marine Corps of the United States of America or the Federal Bureau of Investigations. It is an excessive, outrageous amount of money that's being spent in ways that are just unacceptable in America. That is a reality. We've got to make sure that that money is spent in a lawful way, in a thoughtful way, in a constitutional way, and only for the mission that has been stated as a public mission, and that is to root out dangerous people from our ranks.
Does Tom Homan's presence in Minneapolis in any way give you expectation or hope that things will be drawn down and calmed down there?
Let me tell you, his presence, of course, is a news item, and it should be. But I will tell you, we've got to see a lot of performance changes by the ICE agents in the field, not just in Minneapolis, but in Chicago and around the nation. I've watched what they've done, this reign of terror in the city of Chicago. It is outrageous what they are doing to families who are innocent and no criminal record whatsoever.
Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, I appreciate the time, sir, very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Major.
Next, the FBI raid at the Georgia election office. We were just talking about that. Is this about the 2020 election, or might it have something to do with the upcoming midterms? We're going to explore next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome back to the Conversation Corner. Just switch seats. Didn't take me 3.5 minutes to get over here, by the way. Very quick, very quick. All right. Serious topic, very serious. Officials in Fulton County, Georgia, well, they have concerns. Let's put it that way. Why? Well, there was an FBI raid at their election operations center yesterday. County officials confirmed that federal agents took 700 boxes of records linked, they said, to the 2020 presidential election. Fulton County maintains not only was that 2020 election secure, but that they have, as a reminder, conducted 17 elections since without problems. CBS News election law expert David Becker joins me now. He's also the executive director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research and co-author of a most excellent book called The Big Truth. I happen to know the co-author very well. Pick it up. You will enjoy it. I want to play for you, David, sound today from Rob Pitts, who is the chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. Please play that.
This week's activities show that Fulton County is still much a target, and I'm told that I am personally a target. I'm a big boy. Now, while we've grown accustomed to name-calling and rhetoric, we will not give 1 inch to those who seek to take control of our elections. We're going to fight this in court with every resource that we have.
Now, David, it is worth acknowledging, and Brad Raffensperger, when he was Secretary of State of Georgia, said there were at times problems in Fulton County's approach to election administration. Many of those have been addressed. Is there anything real and concerning about what happened last night regards records tied to the 2020 election?
Well, first of all, Secretary Raffensperger is right in the sense that no election is ever perfect. A big election in this country is actually 10,000 little elections in different jurisdictions, relying upon over 1 million volunteers with 160 million Americans taking part in something they don't do every day. So there's things that happen, but our system is built with resilience in mind. So there are checks and balances and redundancies, and you as I've talked about this many times, that prevent any of this having an effect on the outcome. And that's exactly what happened in Fulton County. Even though they were running an election with record high turnout in the middle of a global pandemic with new voting machines they had never used, with paper ballots for the first time in 2 decades. They had a few hiccups here and there, but those ballots were counted 3 times, 3 different ways. Twice by machine, different machines, and once entirely by hand with observers. So there's clearly no problem. We know what happened in Fulton County. We know what happened in Georgia. And the reality is Joe Biden won that election.
And that part about observers, Republican and Democratic
exactly,
observers,
both campaigns. Trump
by law,
campaign. Yeah,
required to be there to oversee the hand count and to verify what they saw actually happened.
And they were looking at those paper ballots, which had clear indications of who the voters had voted for. We know who won. Brad Raffensperger has said he was a Trump supporter in 2020. He wasn't looking to oversee an election in which his candidate lost, but he's also calling balls and strikes, and he had to say what was true.
David, is any of this, though it is ostensibly about 2020, could it be about 2026 in some other sort of signaling way?
Yeah, I actually think it's much more about 2026 and
Explain,
2028.
please.
Well, so first of all, 2020 is over 5 years ago, which means that the statute of limitations on any potential federal crime, even if there was justification, which there isn't, has run. There's no legitimate law enforcement that can be done about what happened in 2020 at this point in time. We already know what those ballots are going to show because we've shown our work every single time. The election officials in those areas have done that. So it looks like this is much more likely, especially given the rhetoric we're hearing from some of the members of the administration and others who have lied about the election for so long, that this is about delegitimizing a future election, 2026, 2028, where perhaps the president and his allies don't think his party is going to do quite so well.
Oftentimes there is scrutiny, but as you and I have reported and documented, election administrators and those who volunteer to do this work survive that scrutiny time and time again.
Absolutely.
David Becker, always a pleasure. Thanks,
Thanks, Major.
Gold bugs, rejoice. That's what they call people who trade in gold, gold bugs. Prices keep climbing. Why? What about other commodities? We're going to take a look at all of that next when we come back. Kind of a technical subject, but cool, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. The price of gold has reached an all-time high, eclipsing $5,000 per ounce, nearly $5,500 actually. Investors are buying up precious metals like gold and silver as a safe harbor against economic volatility overseas and here. I spoke with a subject expert about this, Bloomberg's Jim Wiederhold, about what all this means. So gold and silver keep setting records. Historically, that's been regarded as a flight to safety. Should we still think of it that way?
Yeah, the gold and silver metals, the precious metals within the broader commodities space, they're clearly known to be stores of value. So that was their traditional role many hundreds of years ago, and that still stands true today. So, people are looking for a store of value. We're seeing, depreciation in the U.S. dollar. There's some rotation out of U.S. assets more internationally, but also a function of that is more investment in gold. So, people are looking for that store of value, that safe haven, and gold fills those roles.
Does the unpredictability of Trump policy in regards to tariffs create more of a flight to safety?
I would think, with all the news headlines that we're getting, it's clearly something that affects commodities markets in general. So, you see tariffs on certain critical metals and minerals that, almost every country now is really taking a close look at over the last year. So they're looking at internally within their borders on how to get all the resources that they need. And, commodity prices are affected by that. So, last year we saw big moves up and down in the copper price on potential tariff news. And then once the tariff news came out that it, wasn't as bad as expected, we saw a drop in prices. So over the last year, tariffs have been a big part of the reason for commodities prices moving higher more generally.
And Jim, you just said another one of those magic words, copper. What's the copper of it all in terms of commodity pricing and copper's relationship as a kind of stand-in for the broader global economy?
It's typically known as Dr. Copper, so it's very correlated to economic data points around the world, industrial growth. And it's interesting that we're seeing new all-time highs at copper around the same time as new all-time highs in gold. So typically copper rises when we have strong economic growth, but a part of that is now also it's becoming somewhat of a store of value. And so we're seeing these moves higher at the same time that there's worry around the world from investors, and that's why gold has moved higher. So it's kind of one of those unprecedented moments in the commodities markets with both these metals, gold and copper, moving higher at the same time.
I want to pick up on another word you just said, worry, because I've heard you say in other podcasts there is a potential wall of worry out there that could influence commodity prices?
Yeah, we've had a very big run up in equity prices. Some people are concerned about valuations at this point, and commodities are typically used as a diversifier within a portfolio. So, people are looking back at the asset class over the last 2 years and, putting exposure on as a diversifier because commodities tend to be uncorrelated to other major asset classes. So, they fit nicely to help with the diversification that people are looking for right now.
And what do global trends in energy consumption mean for the commodity space?
Well, we're seeing a shift compared to what we've seen historically last few decades. We're going through an energy transition. So, while the past was fueled by fossil fuels, the future is going to be powered by metals. So, we're electrifying all parts of our economy. And the key industrial metals, even the precious metals and battery metals, there's a lot of forecasts that demand is going to be only picking up from here. And, supply could be an issue because it takes a while to have a new mine go into production and sometimes 10 years. So our in-house research team thinks that there's going to be big supply deficits in copper. We've already seen deficits the last few years in some of the other precious metals like platinum. And that could continue. We'll see what happens over the next few years.
And Jim, real quick, stagflation, a concern of yours, 2026?
I would think after the last few years of a deflationary trend, we saw CPI readings move lower. They're still above what the Fed's target is on the core readings. But, if we are in a completely different environment than we were in the 2010s, where globalization is reversing, we're seeing more geopolitical tensions pick up, severe weather. It's all a recipe for potentially higher prices, and a lot of that is people's utility bills are increasing pretty dramatically with the introduction of a new energy need for AI as well. So that's a recipe for prices to potentially move higher from here.
Bloomberg's Jim Wiederhold. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Governors used to dream of becoming senators. Now senators dream of becoming governors. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, the latest example. Our political panel will weigh in on that and much more when we come back. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back. Minnesota Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar this morning announced she's a candidate for governor. And as many people do these days, put out a pretty well-designed and well-produced video. And immigration enforcement front and center of her campaign. Take a look.
And I'm running for every Minnesotan who wants ICE and its abusive tactics out of the state we love.
Bringing our political panel, Democratic strategist John McCarthy, Republican strategist Lance Trober. This is a surprise to no one. The announcement would have been sooner, but obviously the tumult and the sadness in Minneapolis delayed that necessarily. There's going to be no competition on the Democratic side for Amy Klobuchar. She's going to be the Democratic nominee. How do you size up that race for governor?
I mean, I think that Amy Klobuchar is a very formidable candidate, and I would actually think that we should all actually watch the whole launch video. It's about 4 minutes because the way she opens it up, she actually reflects on what Minnesotans have been going through for the whole year. And I think a lot of us forget because it feels so far away, but you had the Speaker of the House assassinated. You had a shooting in a Catholic school. You have this unrest that you're seeing in the streets. So I think people are looking for a very steady hand, and I think Klobuchar provides that. And when you just listen to her talk, like, you hear Minnesota. And I think authenticity is important, and I think voters are going to follow her.
Lance?
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, it's the nomination is going to be hers, and she's a very, I mean, look, she's going to raise money, she's going to do a lot of, campaigning, and I think she will be a
proven statewide track record.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be questions about her temperament. I mean, there have been reports over the course of several years, her stuff of how she treats staff, and stuff of lore in this town. It's not just.
And she also addressed fraud in Minnesota, and she, as a Democrat, will get questions about what did you know and when, and why didn't you raise more hackles about it with Governor Walz.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, she's going to be a strong candidate.
Yeah. I want to play for you sound from the Speaker of the House because though he didn't know it, well, I think he knew it, but Dick Durbin is not experienced as a senator, and nor should he be, in breaking news on television. But he said something in the moment that was super important. There's an agreement in the Senate, pass 5 bills, hold 1 back, DHS funding, send it back to the House after it is approved on some short-term basis. That means this is going to have to be revisited by the House of Representatives, and a very sad Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, referred to that today. Let's listen.
these things are out of the control of the House right now, and it's rather frustrating for us. We got all 12 appropriations bills done. We sent them to the Senate. We did our job, and now it looks like people are playing political games with it, so it's frustrating.
Playing political games with it. No, the fact of the matter is the White House supports this deal. The White House knows that it's going to have to agree to some reforms for DHS, or this bill is not going to get passed in any form. So the Speaker is going to have to figure out a way to pass it.
But who better to do it than Mike Johnson? I say this time and again. He steps up every single time. Everybody's like, oh, he's down. He's got 1 vote, 2 votes, whatever. He always steps up and puts it over the line. I do think, though, he's got a caucus.
I mean, not always. There have been more rule votes that have gone down in flames under his speakership than any
recently.
other
But if you count the shutdown, the one big beautiful bill, I mean, in crunch time, he always puts it over the line.
And this will be a crunch time experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
John?
I mean, you found a bipartisan moment. I will say Speaker Johnson can somehow always find a way to pull a rabbit out of a hat. It continues to impress me every single time. But, you know, the other thing that's impressive, too, on this side is Democrats have really stepped into their own in terms of learning to use their power of leverage in the minority. When you don't control anything, you don't have a ton of tools at your disposal. But Democrats have been able to shift narrative here. And I think that they've put a really important issue on the table, and that's accountability. People are looking at these issues out of Minnesota, and they want someone to feel accountable to them.
Related to that, John, here's Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, talking about impeachment and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Please listen.
We intend to proceed with impeachment proceedings if Kristi Noem is not fired. Kristi Noem is a complete and total embarrassment. She's a disgrace.
Wait a minute. How can the minority party in the House proceed with impeachment proceedings?
You can introduce them. Yeah.
How do you regard? Because I think 6 months ago, if you'd asked any House Democrat about the topic of impeachment, they would have sort of regarded it under their breath as a hot stove moment. Don't really go there. We have other things to do. How do you think about this either strategically or as a matter of accountability?
Well, I think that voters can do multiple things at once. And I think that voters are telling both parties an important lesson here when it comes to border security and what we're seeing in Minnesota. I think people are saying, on one hand, they want borders that are enforced. Democrats need to get our act together on immigration. And secondarily, they're seeing these things in the streets and saying this is way too far. So I think that that's giving Democrats an opening here to talk about this in a way that Republicans are going to, use this, or they're going to have it as a political liability.
He and I, this is we're the dynamic duo. We sometimes agree on this show, right? Yeah, I mean, but look, never underestimate the Democrats' ability to overplay their hand on this one, because voters have made it very clear they still want deportations in this country. And I see things like this mayor saying, well, I'm playing footsie with criminal illegal aliens. The voters are very clear on that. They want these folks gone.
But there's some nuance to that. They're not for the idea of these kind of patrolmen roaming through their streets, showing up at schools, showing up at churches.
I don't disagree with you on tactics.
But tactics is a very polite way of putting it. People aren't for this kind of, this is just a clear, it goes against the very concept of consent of the governed. People aren't for this.
Very quickly, I want to play sound because our Nicole Skanga, one of our valued colleagues, talked to Jacob Fry, Minneapolis mayor who's here in town, about what's happening rhetorically and what he sees or not seeing on the actual streets of Minneapolis. He's the mayor there. Let's listen.
What I will say is I will believe it when I see it. They have talked about drawing down the numbers in terms of federal agents, ICE, and Border Patrol in Minneapolis, and that is essential. The reality, however, is that we need Operation Metro Surge to end. It is not about creating safety in Minneapolis.
Lance, you get 10 seconds.
Exactly what I'm thinking. We'll believe it when we see it. If we're going to have compromise, there has to be compromise. He needs to step up and work with the federal government.
John McCarthy, Lance Trover, always a pleasure. You called yourself a dynamic duo that sometimes agree. That's why we love to have you here. Happy Thursday, everyone. We are The Takeout, relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. Daily Report coming up next.